Hi there. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to make over your fireplace on a budget. I'm Erin Valencich, an award-winning interior designer and real estate developer based in Los Angeles. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to make over your fireplace on a budget. Depending on the style of your home, there are so many different ideas for budget fireplace makeovers. You may be a bit overwhelmed. I've designed budget fireplace makeovers in a range of styles and costs. And you'll see how I took this, to this, and this, to this, along with many more great before and afters of our fireplace design projects across a range of styles and budgets. Click the link in the description to download images of these projects that I'm going to share so that you can take notes on the design elements you like to use in your own projects. This will really help as you follow along the video and we go through each one during the episode. This is going to help you understand how to make over your fireplace on a budget. Let's get started. For this fireplace behind me, we chose a really light natural limestone, large format, so it's more of a contemporary scale to the tile, but again in a very natural, soft, clean material. It doesn't really completely fade into the wallpaper. It offers a little bit of contrast, but when you look at this wall as a whole, you don't see this like another break right in the middle. Because there are so many planes going on in this space, there's niches, there's low ceilings, there's high ceilings, there's angled ceilings, there's skylights, there's windows. It's already kind of all over the place, so I wanted it to feel a little more consistent, but also make sure that we weren't trying to match two materials exactly. Like if we'd matched a gray stone with a gray wallpaper, that's where it starts to feel a little bit like boring and even more cold. So chose a little bit of a lighter color there in the stone. Picks up some of the lightness and the hues in the wallpaper, so they definitely play well together. It also starts to hide that aluminum firebox. That wouldn't have been my first choice of tone to use, but this fireplace was existing. It's got a cool indoor-outdoor thing going, so it's really fun when you sit here in the living room. You can see through it to the outside, and we have a seating area out there as well, so it really does double duty. I would have chosen probably a black iron or metal material instead, but we had this brushed silver, so I also wanted that to kind of disappear. If I'd gone with a darker stone on the fireplace, you'd see the lighter silver. It would have contrasted and you would have noticed that silver even more. So this was also an effort to kind of make that disappear and just fade in, kind of outside. I did build and design a custom metal bookcase in this niche that is created behind the fireplace. With the sofa here, it needed something to fill that space, and because it's so long and narrow, it would have been odd to have a little side table there. It would have been kind of crammed into the corner. And you need a place to put stuff, especially in a living room. Like decorative accessories matter, and if you don't have any surfaces to put things, it just kind of feels cold and it feels unfinished. So the bookcase not only allows us to kind of layer some books, but I really wanted to have a nice tall vase of flowers in that corner to kind of bring some height and soften that up, especially because there's a big picture window over the sofa and then there's another window to the left of it. It needed a little something there. So we did a custom metal bookcase, bringing in that iron and that kind of oil rubbed bronze finish. Now you might be saying, metal, that doesn't sound very warm and cozy, but actually I think, in a modern space particularly, any kind of like natural iron finish, funny enough, it does feel warm and it does feel kind of more natural than a polished stainless or a polished silver or something very cold and obviously kind of artificially made. So that does a little bit of good job to also give us some contrast in the space so that we don't have everything white and cream. So for this master bedroom renovation, we really wanted to continue the theme of bringing in more warmth and architecture into this house. This wall behind me is one of the first things you see when you enter the bedroom from the door there. And also when that door is open, it's into the main corridor of the house. So any guests coming in, anybody coming through, if that door is open, this is also the wall you see. So it becomes an even more important element and area to address with any type of finished materials that we're going to be choosing to make sure that it's impactful and that the wall is, doing more than just making the bedroom pretty. It's actually adding architectural interest to the entire house because of the layout of this home. When it came to updating this fireplace, the firebox was already here, and the stone originally, I think, came up just a little bit. It was kind of very boring, just had a little surround around it, kind of a normal ordinary builder special fireplace stuck into the wall. So we decided to bring the tile all the way up and do this really beautiful kind of leathered finish stone. It's got a nice texture to it, so it gives you that natural warmth, but with something a little bit different to the finish. It's not too shiny, and it's also not too matte and too rough. So I really love a leather finish on stone. It's beautiful. And then to make this wall even more impactful, I extended that same tile all the way to the end. Previously, only the fireplace had been addressed with stone, and it was a little bit boring. And because we want to make this whole wall more interesting, I just brought the material all the way across and then also added this floating wood shelf, because the architecture here of the fireplace kind of popping out creates a bit of a nook, and yet it was, you know, it's kind of like, what are you going to do with this space? And we wanted an area to put some decorative accessories. We leaned this giant, beautiful photograph. So it just becomes a really nice moment to decorate, to bring a little personality, a little warmth to the space without having to put, you know, more furniture like a bookcase or a cabinet, and then you need to still be custom making something to fit into the length of this area. So this was the perfect opportunity to do a floating shelf, particularly because there's two walls on each side that you can anchor into. So not only do you have to put support in the wall to support something like this, like an L bracket of steel, and then the wood shelf goes right over it, but when it's able to connect on both sides, that really ensures that it's not going to sag over time. So this was the perfect opportunity architecturally to be able to do a move like that, and I think it turned out pretty well. For this vintage fireplace, I wanted to call out some of the beautiful original architectural detail, but at the same time make it feel a little bit more contemporary. Originally, this fireplace was sunflower yellow and white. I can't remember, I think the body was yellow and the trim was still white, so you really saw this pattern and it was just a very jarring color. So this is actually a really light taupey gray, where the rest of the walls in this room are white. So you don't immediately notice to the naked eye that the fireplace is gray, but it just gives a little layer of dimension and of color and materiality here, as well as then allowing the architectural details from the 1920s to shine, because those are in white. I put this hearth stone over the original hearth, which was this really ugly kind of puke green tile that was here. So just used a remnant from my stone fabricator and had them lay this in here. Because the fireplace is not working, I was able to kind of put whatever I wanted inside. Typically fireboxes, which is this internal area where the fire actually happens, are generally black, and they become real eyesores. They literally just draw your attention to this black hole. So if you have a black firebox, I typically opt for a much darker exterior to my fireplace so that it looks like one continuous architectural moment and you don't stare at the dirty firebox. Worse is if you have a light colored firebox with a real fire and you get smoke all over the back, and then it just always looks dirty. So in that case, paint it black so that it hides all the smoke and it doesn't look dirty. So had this been a black firebox, I probably would have done a black stone or a much darker paint color to just make this whole element be dark and contrasty. But because this fireplace no longer works, I painted the interior white. So it keeps it light and bright and fresh, and it kind of disappears into the overall palette. I laid some really simple, just garden stones on the bottom to bring up the height of the hearth, as well as to give it a little texture and fill in. And then I found this really beautiful conch shell actually in the garage of one of our renovation projects. So these things are like a couple $1,000s each usually, and it was just sitting there abandoned. Nobody wanted it. So I brought it back, steam cleaned it, and then put some ceramic logs in it that are also white. So layering the texture and palette of these white elements kind of gives you visually something to look at, but it isn't screaming at you and drawing your attention. Because it's not a working fireplace, I don't have a screen. If it was, obviously we'd need a screen, and then there's lots of really beautiful fireplace screens to be able to be used for decoration. So overall, I think that you want to keep your palette really consistent with your fireplace depending on the firebox. If it's dark or light, that generally leads my choices around stone and materials. If I had a black firebox, I could have also done a black hearthstone so that the black kind of bleeds out and it feels continuous and not so choppy. So based on that decision is usually where I start designing around that firebox and try to hide it as much as possible with my design choices. So one thing that I find is a real problem with most contemporary homes, or let's say new build homes, not even contemporary. It's just typically in the traditional or transitional homes where you see the mantle just like stuck on the front of the wall, and there's no depth for the real fireplace. This doesn't have that problem, so we'll share some photos of what I'm talking about, but I call it kind of a builder special. It looks totally cheap and fake and cheesy, like they've literally just stuck this little shallow mantle facade on a wall, and it always looks odd because you expect some heft and some might and some like real architecture in your fireplace. At least I do. That's how they're typically built. You know, this is like solid because fire is supposed to be going up and down in there. You don't want to stick just some little simple little molding on the front of a wall and be like, oh, fireplace. So that's one of the things I typically do in living rooms or in any room that has a fireplace that looks like that, is we frame it out and we build it out, even if that's artificial, and even if we have to return back then to that firebox, but we give it some architecture and some heft, and that makes such a huge difference. So if you have one of those sad little fireplaces and mantles that's just like stuck on the wall, think about framing it out. Even if you come out 6 inches, I mean, this is pretty significant. This is probably more like 16 inches deep. But even if you come out 6 inches, 8 inches from the wall, and then have to return back internally to your firebox if you're not moving its depth location. So if your firebox is here, you frame out 6 inches and then you return back to it. It looks great, and you can get a really great mantle design. And I also like to keep materials consistent. Sometimes I see in contemporary architecture where someone's renovated and they've literally just stuck stone on the front. You know, maybe you don't have a mantle and the traditional molding and all that stuff of your fireplace surround, but you've tiled the face. If I was going to tile this or clad this whole element in stone, I would have to return back and let that material die into the corner. And now you've again completed the architectural move. You're keeping that whole form in one material instead of slapping some tile on the face and then you see the edge where the material ends. It kills the look of any fireplace. So always, if you're renovating a fireplace or have the opportunity to make your fireplace look better, if you're going to be adding tile to the front or stone, always wrap that tile and stone all the way back to the last corner here, and it's always going to look so much better. Thanks for watching today. Please like my video, subscribe to my channel, and click the bell for notifications so you don't miss when we post the next episode. Check out some of my other episodes and tutorials here to see inside some of our award-winning design projects. If you wish to learn more about how to design and renovate your home, you can check out my complete kitchen, bath, and interior courses at erinvdesign.com. For more inspiration, design tips, and product selections, follow me on Instagram at erinvstyle.